Today we're going to be working on the Geneva cam, which is shown in chapter 7 of your book. In order to do that, we first need to create a template. And in order to do that, we're going to first go back to the drawing we created in chapter 6. And the reason we're going to do that is because the layers over here that we created in chapter 6 are almost identical to what we're going to do in the drawing in chapter 7. So open up your drawing from chapter 6, and this is your homework 7.brac, or the locator, the bracket drawing from chapter 7. If you haven't done this yet, you can go through the drawing in chapter 7. You probably should go through and finish the whole drawing, although you only need actually the layer set up. Presumably you have done this, and then the first thing you're going to do is just go and delete everything. Now, stop. Don't delete anything yet. What you need to do is open up your drawing, and the first thing you should do, always, before you delete anything, is save a new copy. So we're going to do a save as, and we're going to call this, let me bring this over so you can actually see it. HW8, and you already see I already have a underscore gencam.dwg. I don't want to overwrite that, so I'm going to just call it Gencam 1, and we're just going to save it as a drawing for now. So now we have a copy of our homework 7, and it's saved to a new drawing. And actually, if you notice it, the homework 7 completely went away. So we didn't it doesn't actually exist up here anymore. So now I'm going to just go and select everything and delete it, and everything's gone. Now I do need to add one additional layer. We're going to do now. And if you look on page 7.9, if you compare all the layers that are shown on page 7.9 to the layers that you have here, you'll see that there's one layer missing, and the layer is title block lettering. And the title block lettering is actually exactly the same as the title block, in the sense that it's green, except the title block lettering actually uses the default line weight instead of this 1.2 millimeter thicker line weight. So we're going to come up here, create a new layer. We're going to call it title underscore block. And I'm just going to call it title underscore block underscore text. Only one T. And I do want to point out, as you're creating different layers, and generally, again, as you work for a company, you're going to create layers very infrequently because you're going to use the layers that they've given you, and your layers will always be the same. And again, as I said, we're going to create this layer in green. We're going to click OK, and the default width is the layer that the width that we're going to use, the line weight. The line type will be continuous. But as you create layers yourself, you should always try to use the same format. And if you notice, the format that I use is that the first word is capitalized. When we have more than one word, I'm always using an underscore, and then the second word is not capitalized, or the third word is not capitalized. So if we slide this out, you'll see text is not capitalized. So it's always capital underscore lowercase underscore lowercase. If we had 3 words or 4 words, again, we'd have lowercase, underscore, and then again another lowercase word. Okay, so once you have that title block text, you can close this out. And if you're following along in the book, We're going to now actually add a border and a title block to the layout. Now, if you remember, we talked a little bit about the model space and what's called the paper space. And the paper space is what we use when we want to print the drawing. Down here, the paper space is what we have over here called layout. We have a layout 1 and a layout 2. And these are default, they're set up for you as an initial startup layouts. And go ahead and just click layout 1. And what you see is you see this sort of default layout show up. We have this inner layout. And if you remember, this is called a viewport. We haven't used viewports yet. You're going to use a viewport for the first time in this drawing. Although for this particular drawing, we're going to end up deleting this viewport in a minute. So what I want you to do is we're going to go through and do a page setup, or we're going to talk about page setup. We're really not going to do a whole lot with it, in part because we're not in class and we don't have a printer setup to do, because any printer setup would have to be based on whatever printer you have at home. We're not connecting to the printer in our classroom at C205. So what you want to do is come over to this layout, on layout, right mouse click, and then open up the page setup manager. And in the page setup manager, you'll see this layout 1. And right now this layout 1 is set up for an Adobe PDF. The plotter is the Adobe PDF converter. Plot size is 8.5 by 11 in landscape. Where it's going to a documents directory backslash, and it's going to be a star.pdf file. Let's click on modify just to look and see what's inside this. And here you can see that we have a paper size of a letter. The plot area, we're going to plot a layout. Our scale is 1:1. Our drawing orientation is landscape. Our plot style right here is none. We could choose various styles. For instance, if I were having you plot to a monochrome printer, I would have you choose monochrome as opposed to grayscale. Because if I had you choose grayscale, what it would do is it would print line weights of different colors or different thickness, different grayscales. And what I mean by that is that something that was yellow or something that was white would be a very, very dim gray, versus something that, let's say, was black, which would actually be black, or something that was blue, which would be a dark gray. And you would you would see the difference in the line colors, but you would barely see those yellow lines, and you would probably not see the white lines, or you'd barely be able to make them out. So if you wanted to print with a black and white printer, you would need to set this up to monochrome. If you chose none, it would probably print out okay, although I'm not 100% sure. If you have a monochrome printer, you could actually try that at home and see what happens. Now, if you had an actual printer, if we were printing in class, you could actually go choose your printer. And these are set up right here to, let's see, both default set up in AutoCAD as well as printers that I have available to me. And as you can see, we don't have that many. I have a Xerox Phaser, which I actually don't even have available anymore. And otherwise, we're pretty much AutoCAD PDF. We're going to leave this. We're going to set this and leave it as Adobe PDF. And what you do, you can set it. If you have a printer set up, you can set it up to a printer and try to print directly. Generally, we're almost always going to be printing landscape. There are probably some rare occasions you might print portrait. Anyway, you can hit OK. And then finally close this out. The next thing we're going to do And again, this is the viewport. Click on this viewport, and for now, just go ahead and delete it. So it's going to be gone. Now, these dotted lines here on the outside, this is the actual print area. Now, if you recall, we just set up the print device to be an Adobe PDF. So essentially, the print area is the whole page, except for the very, very slight outside margin. If we set an actual printer, these dotted lines would be slightly more inward. And that's because most printers can't actually print directly to the edge. Oftentimes you get a half inch or quarter inch to the edge, where the Adobe PDF printer, of course, is just a virtual printer because it's just printing to a computer screen. So it essentially can go right to the edge. It sort of defaults and says, well, I'm not going to take you right to the edge. I'm going to take you within about 1/8 of an inch to that edge. So if you chose a printer, you might see something a little bit smaller than that. So what you want to do here is you want to choose next the layer for title block. And we're going to go ahead and draw in the title block. So what you want to do is choose a rectangle and then come down here somewhere in the corner. And it doesn't really matter where because we're going to adjust this in a second. And just click. And if it happens to default directly on the corner, that's okay. We'll talk about fixing that in a second. Start to move your corner, or excuse me, move your rectangle, create your rectangle. And what you want to do is you want to make a rectangle with dimensions of 10.25 by 7.75. So we're going to type at 10.25, comma 7.75, and then hit enter. And you can see now that because this is an Adobe PDF, we actually have quite a bit of extra space beyond that 10.25, 7.75 area. We're going to go ahead and move this and just basically center it roughly. Center it roughly in that area. We can just choose move, pick a corner, and center it. And again, it does not have to be perfect. So the next thing we want to do, if you look on page 712, you see their title block lines. And within the title block lines, there's text. So we want to first go ahead and create the title block lines. And to create the title block lines, we're just going to use a line. So we're going to choose our line here. And we're going to come down and start from our corner. And if you notice, well, first of all, I'm not getting any kind of a reference here. Well, why is that? Because something's not turned on. So let's take a look and let's go see. If we come down here, we can see, well, first of all, our ortho mode is turned off. So we're not being restricted to only move orthogonally. So we should turn that on. And then if we can restrict to specified angles or polar tracking, we can choose one of these or the other. We can leave the ortho mode on because we're only going to go in the X and Y dimensions, but that will allow us to move properly, but it's not going to give us the snap. So now we should snap to the 2D reference points, our object snap. When you turn our object snap on, then you'll see when we come down here, we see a snap point. Now, we can see we're still in the line mode because when we look down here, we can see line and it's saying specify the first point. So we start in the corner, but we don't want to start a line there. We just want to start tracking from there. So we just, again, without hitting the mouse button, start moving the line up and create a tracking line and just type 0.25 and hit enter. And now we start moving over to the right. So now if you take a look over here, you can see we're still missing something because we're not snapping to our intersection over here. We can snap back to this point, but actually it will let us snap to our intersection. There we go. So we can snap to our intersection. So we hit our mouse button and we snap the line to that intersection. Now we could go back and start a new line. In this case, we could actually start tracking back up from this point, but I'm not sure if we're going to track from this point or from the lower corner. So I'm going to go back and start the line again. So we're going to go back to line, start back at this corner, and now we're going to track up 0.5 and hit enter. And again, we're going to move along. And we want to snap at that intersection. And actually, we're not able to snap at that intersection this time. You know what? Why were we able to snap at that intersection previously is because I came down to this corner and then brought the tracking up, and that allowed me to snap. But let's go back and see what we're missing. So why were we not able to snap at that reference point? So I did snap at that point. I'm going to stop my line, and I'm going to come look down here, and let's see, ISO draft, restrict to specified angles off, snap to 2D reference points, show snapping reference lines. Polar tracking. Do we actually need to have the polar tracking instead of the ortho tracking? Let's go back and undo this. Actually, instead of undoing, let's delete this line and go back and repeat it. So again, we start from here. We're going to move up to get a tracking line, type 0.5, slide over. We see our tracking line. And with polar tracking, you now see we have the intersection point. So we need to have polar tracking on in order to get the intersection with that line, not just the ortho tracking. So with polar tracking, we can then complete that. So now we still have to make the vertical lines now. The first vertical line is 2.35 inches over, and it only goes up to the first line. So we're going to start here, choose line, start at this point, get our tracking line over, type 2.35, hit enter, move up like so. Then we're going to move over 2.3 inches. So from here, move over 2.3. Now you could also do this with offset. So if we do this with offset, for instance, the next offset is also 2.3, so we can choose offset. Specify the distance. So 2.3, enter, choose the line to offset like that. Now, the only thing with that is that this line actually needs to be extended all the way up. We have to come over here and then continue it to the top. And then we have another line that's 1.2. So we could use offset again. And we come down here, type 1.2, enter, choose this, move it to there, extend it up. And then from this line, we go back 3.2 inches. So again, we go to offset, back to here, 3.2, choose this line, go back in that direction. And that's it. That takes care of the lines. The next thing we have to do is put the text in. So in order to put the text in, we're going to use our text command. We're going to use a single line text. So we're going to start with single line text. Actually, before we do that, let's blow this up a little bit. And I've already done this, so I know what I need to do. You remember the spacing between here and here is 0.25. It turns out we need a text spacing of about 0.15. So we want to specify a start point. So let's choose a start point right here. It wants a text height. So we come down here, type 0.15, hit enter. It wants a text rotation. We hit enter for 0. Now it wants us to type in the text. So we're going to start, and over here we're going to put drawn by, so dr.by. Now, once we do that, we can automatically continue to start entering more text simply by clicking at a new location. So we can come over here and click up here and start putting in new text. So over here, we should put in Massasoit Community College. Of course, we don't really want to put in Oregon Institute of Technology since we are not there. And then we can click here and enter the CK period by colon, and go ahead and finish this. Now, once you're done, you can move the text around if you need to. And let's take a look. Well, what happened? My text is too large. What happened? I did not change from my title block to my title block text. So how do I do that? Do you remember how you can easily change this? You can select this text, select that text, go to Quick Properties, and simply change the layer to title block text. If you need to move anything, you can select, click on the first point, type move, pick the reference point, and move it to wherever you need to move it. This Massasoit can move back just a hair. Like so. And once you are completely done, you should go through and add the rest of the text. It should look like this. So this is what all your text should look like, exploded, so you can see it all. And then the complete drawing. Well, of course, I'm not going to show you the top. So remember, this is all done in the layout space. We haven't done this in the model space. And then again, if we look at back in the model space, you're going to see absolutely nothing, completely blank. Now, you can go ahead and stop the video and go ahead and enter the rest of this information and then start back up when you're ready. What we're going to do next is create the actual template. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a file, save as, and over here we're going to, in file type, we're going to choose AutoCAD drawing template. So it's a .dwt. And then you can save this wherever you'd like because it's being saved on your machine. And they'd like you to call it ACAD-A-H-title. So ACAD-A-H-title. And then we can click on save. And we get this little box where we can put in a description. So we can type in A size, horizontal layout with title block. Then we can click OK. So that's it. That's how we create a title block. I'm going to end this video now, and in the next video, we'll go ahead and create the Geneva Cam.